All right, everyone, here we go. Notes for Chapter 12, this time talking about multiples and dialogue where there's more than one person involved in an audio script. Let's talk about different types of dialogue copy. First off, the conversation. Unlike most single voice copy, dialogue usually involves a story with a specific plot line and interaction between two or more characters. It's important for you to understand the whole story, not just your part in it. You need to know the overall premise of the message so that you can figure out, yes, where your character fits in, how it interacts with the other characters, but that you see the progression of the script and what the overall message is, so that if there's underlying thoughts, subtext that you need to keep in mind, if there's certain things coming up in the script where you need not just to be able to have a certain type of emotion, but to have a certain type of reaction based on what another character is saying or doing, that you're prepared to convey that with your voice. Two types of dialogue involve interactive dialogue or shared information dialogue. Interactive dialogue, also known as conversational dialogue, is when two or more characters are having a conversation. You're talking with your friend. That is an interactive dialogue. Also, shared information. This is a case where the characters aren't really talking to each other, but they're instead speaking directly to the audience in turn. Each character is interacting primarily with the audience, but must also respond appropriately to the other character sharing information. It's almost as if the script could maybe be done as a monologue, except that you have more than one voice speaking on the subject. And they're going to be speaking in such a way that they're kind of working from each other. They're kind of responding to each other. Could be favorably, could be unfavorably, could be reactionary, but they're not really talking directly to each other. They're talking to you, the listener. All dialogue requires excellent listening, timing, and performing skills. You have to listen to what the other characters are saying. You have to keep pace with timing so that your reactions to what others are saying sound natural and real. And performing in that you give the proper emotion and pacing and emphasis and inflection and all those sorts of things to the words that you're saying as you are responding to other characters. Some types of dialogue copy. First off, let's talk about comedy. It's not the words on the page that make a script funny. It's the intention behind the words. So we've talked a lot about the idea of making sure the words convey a message in the tone, in the attitude, in the emotion that they're supposed to be conveyed in. That's especially true in comedy because the words that we say may wind up having a completely different meaning based on the situation that we're in, and can turn something that might be written as a matter-of-fact sort of bland statement because of the value of the words that are written around it, and someone's reaction to what is happening could wind up being rather funny. What is comedy based on? 4 things. The comedy is based on the unexpected, leading the audience in one direction and then suddenly changing direction and ending up somewhere else. So you're following along, you think what's going to happen in the story, then all of a sudden something happens that's completely out of left field, and it jolts those that are listening in and creates a humorous effect. Comedy can be based on overstating the obvious. Have you ridden on the subway? Have you seen the people in the subway? The people That would be kind of a Jerry Seinfeld type of thing that I could imagine him doing. And then going on and talking about the people of the subway and the things that are seen and observed. That's just one of many examples. Comedy can also be based on placing a totally serious character in a ludicrous situation. That would be the example of the Chicken Man script that we did in a past lab. Chicken Man, very serious about him wanting to be a crime fighter in a chicken suit when he's not busy selling shoes at the local I talk for a living, at the local shoe store. That's another element of comedy when you just have epic fail after epic fail. The fourth one here on our list, though, creating a sense of discomfort in the mind of the audience, creating awkward situations, creating things that are rather unusual and just bizarre. That can also create for comedic elements. Playing lines for laughs will never work. Laughs come only when the audience is surprised. On one hand, they need to be things that aren't really expected, but at the same time, comedy also needs to feel rather natural in light of what is happening in the scene at the time. Rhythm and timing are essential with dialogue. If you want a great example of this, if you have never seen it, go on YouTube, look up Abbott and Costello, Who's on First. It's about 8-9 minutes long, but it is just fast-paced back and forth between the two characters talking about the members of a particular baseball team. And at times it almost seems like they're talking over top of each other, but you can kind of imagine that happening in real life to a certain degree if you're having a conversation where there's a lot of confusion and a lot of uncertainty, and then you see the frustration that builds up in that, and the way that they carry out Who's on First, that fast-paced back and forth along with the added confusion and frustration makes for a hilarious skit. Say your lines in a natural, conversational way appropriate to the situation, and the comedy will happen. Again, a lot of times the comedy happens when something is done in a rather matter-of-fact sort of way, but at the same time is rather unexpected. And that creates for funny elements. Another type of dialogue copy would include using points of ellipse. In dialogue, you'll frequently see the ellipse at the end of one character's line before the thought is complete. Then the next line would be a comment, a response, or an interjection by another character. Then the next line begins with the ellipse as the first character completes his or her thought. The ellipse is effectively a scripted notation for the first actor to allow for a beat in their delivery long enough for the second actor to speak the interjection. So this is a case where you almost kind of hear what might be conveyed in certain situations as maybe a subliminal message or a thought that the second character has while the first character's talking that's kind of interjected in between. It might be a sense of the second character agreeing with what the first character is saying, or a disagreement, like a yeah, you go on, or no way, no how, or whatever. But it's just enough of a pause where you're not necessarily sensing that the first character is waiting for the second character to say something at that point, but there's enough of a pause that allows the second character to slip something in. If you have a line written like this, you can't wait for the second actor to say their short line. You simply leave a short beat or take a breath to allow for their line and to keep going on with your next line. It's one case where, by and large, you want to ignore the second character. Go on with your thing. Now, if you are the second character, you need to deliver your line as though it was a spontaneous thought. When delivered correctly, the dialogue will sound completely real. So timing here is of utmost importance. If the script is written in such a way that character 1 reads one half of a sentence and then there's a short pause for the second character to interject some quick little quip before you character number 1, continue on with what you have to say. If you just stop in the middle of your thought and don't continue on, and you have this awkward pause in the middle, it's absolutely not going to work. You lose all real credibility when that happens. So the timing between the two characters is essential in a script like that. All right, some tips for performing comedic dialogue copy. First off, be real. Keep your character spontaneous and natural. Use a backstory or lead-in line to help get into this moment. Pretend like you are having a real conversation, because when you're recording it and the listener listens to it later on, they need to think you're having a real conversation. Find the dialogue rhythm. The rhythm for a comedic script will be different from that of a serious script. So keep that in mind with the way that you use words, the timing, the pacing, the way that you group thoughts together is going to convey what type of attitude the script is supposed to have. Humanize your character by adding natural sounds like and yeah and and all those. We don't think of those as sounds that we should make when we're doing speech in a professional sort of sense. But again, we're trying to sound casual. We're trying to sound like everyday people. We're trying to sound like we're in believable conversations. These things will help to do that if used appropriately. Guess who's back? Subtext. Find the subtext. What is going on behind the words that are being shared? Know what is not said just as much as what is said. It'll help you to find the correct undertones to use. And stay in the moment. Listen and answer. Respond authentically to other characters. Again, help to create that real believability of the story that you are telling. All right, so this is the last of 3 chapters that were together in this unit, chapters 4 and 11 and 12. Make sure you finished up the study questions along with the notes. Get those turned in. Take a look at the pre-class questionnaire on Blackboard before we have our online class meeting together. And as always, make sure you're watching Cougar Mail and Blackboard for any changes and updates on what's happening with BPT 121.